Greetings, and welcome to A Year of Movies, a Planet Geek production. For this project, we are using the Ivan Walters reference book of 365 films to watch on the day they happened. Each day, we watch a movie associated with the date we are watching it on. Alright, and as it is the 28th of May, we are going to be watching Dazed and Confused from 1993, directed by Richard Linklater and starring Jason London. So upon its original release, I was definitely aware of the existence of this movie, but I don't believe that I got to see it in the theater when it originally came out. I believe I did happen to see it on either early VHS or probably early DVD when it was released, but yeah, that was my first experience seeing it, and I have seen it several times since then. And like I had already mentioned, not only does this movie star Jason London, but it also stars Willie Wiggins, Rory Cochrane, Matthew McConaughey, Parker Posey, Milla Jovovich, Ben Affleck, and Sasa Jensen. So to begin with, this is actually to encompass this whole entire thing. This is one of those coming-of-age types of movies where it follows the mayhem and of a group of rowdy teenagers in Austin, Texas, celebrating the last day of school in 1976. After the cancellation of a big-time house party, the actual graduating class heads to a popular pool hall and joins an impromptu keg party. However, one of the star football players of Randall Pink Floyd, played by Jason London, is toiling with a promissory note to focus on the championship series of next year and abstain from partying starting at the end of that school year. Meanwhile, the incoming freshmen try to avoid being hazed by the seniors, most notably the sadistic bully, Fred O'Banion, played by Ben Affleck. So this is a fantastic ensemble cast, and it's the type of storytelling that really is well done when it's done in this format, where you have several characters and several different storylines that eventually collide into one event and then spring off into whatever happens afterwards and all that. And this is a perfect example of that. This version of a look back at late 70s high school kids is pretty much like the 70s looking back at American Graffiti from George Lucas, looking back at the 50s, their perspective and all that sort of thing. So we're dealing with a 90s look back at the 70s, and it's just so beautifully done. We have some great young and up-and-coming actors that are just getting known, and from this point go hell and high water into their careers and all that sort of thing, which is fantastic to see, especially when so many of them have such baby faces in this version of the movie. But it is, all in all, it's one of those types of movies. It's a fantastic look at a group of characters just existing. We're dealing with just over a day and a bit in the life of all these characters, and how well of a story is constructed from so many loose ends. It's just a fantastic movie to watch. And that final day of school happens to be May 28th, 1976, and which just is less than a minute into this 1 hour and 42 minute movie. And as it is the 29th of May, we are going to be watching The FBI Story from 1959, directed by Marvin Leroy and starring James Stewart. Now, as I've mentioned before, being a fan of James Stewart, I am well aware of his catalog of movies. Now, I haven't seen every single movie, and while I was aware of this particular movie, I had not seen it until the viewing for this project. And like I'd mentioned, not only does this movie star James Stewart, but it also stars Vera Mills, Joyce Taylor, Murray Hamilton, Larry Pennell, Nick Adams, Diane Jurgens, and Gene Wills. So for the most part, we are listening to a FBI agent reciting his career. This veteran being Chip Hardesty, who is played by James Stewart. And he basically narrates the occurrences from like the 1920s to like the 1940s for his working with the FBI. After he'd married Lucy Ann, who is Vera Miles, who's a local librarian, Hardesty is supposed to leave the leave the agency. But when he hears J. Edgar Hoover speak, he has a change of heart. He fully embraces the agency itself, as he ends up traveling from one investigation to another with his partner Sam Cardinal, who is played by Murray Hamilton, and then basically Hardesty ends up facing down like famous mobsters, Klansmen, and spies of all sorts. So that being said, this movie is sort of like what Forrest Gump is, the storytelling. He just happens to be involved with a lot of major major investigations throughout his storied career within the FBI. From his earliest assignment of being sent to investigate the KKK, and then to investigate deaths of Native Americans and a plot to people stealing their oil. Then running into such notable gangsters as John Dillinger, Babyface Nelson, Pretty Boy Floyd, Ma Parker, and even Machine Gun Kelly. And of course, our path crosses at the appropriate time, where we run into the knowledge of Pearl Harbor being bombed, and we end up with the family losing the son in the family on the shores of Iwo Jima, which basically in itself wraps up with him, Hardesty himself, succeeding in breaking up a Soviet spy ring in New York City, because why not? Now, when it comes to the ideal facts of this movie, it is definitely very whitewashed for it. It is definitely like, hey, the FBI is doing no wrong, so there's no other side of the coin sort of thing. Because this movie is very much presented by the FBI. There's actually a thanking the FBI and for their assistance in being able to do this movie at the final title card of the actual film. And on that first meeting with J. Edgar Hoover, it actually happens on May 29th, 1924, which is about 27 minutes into this 2-hour and 29-minute movie. And as it is the 30th of May, we are going to be watching Amazing Grace from 2006, directed by Michael Apted and starring Ioan Gruffudd. So to begin with, when I saw the actual poster for this movie, I do remember seeing things about it, but obviously from what I am saying here, I have not seen this movie until this project. And like I just mentioned, not only does this movie star Ioan Gruffudd, but it also stars Romulo Garia, Benedict Cumberbatch, Albert Finney, Michael Gambon, and Rufus Sewell. So the movie is capsulized when, in the 18th century England, the House of Commons member William Wilberforce, who is played by Ioan Guilford, and his close friend and future Prime Minister William Pitt, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, begin a lengthy battle to abolish Great Britain's slave trade. And through Wilberforce's, though Wilberforce's legislation is soundly defeated in 1971, his growing affection for Barbara Spooner, played by Romolia Garai, inspires him to take up the fight once more. So when this all boils down to it, this is an interesting sort of period piece, which is stuff that I kind of enjoy. And we have a lot of great notable actors showing up, doing their tour de force of acting. The story itself is an interesting one, one that I was not aware of until the watching of this particular movie, and the use of the amazing song Amazing Grace has got an interesting sort of inflection in the movie. Now, it's probably not my favorite movie that I've seen on this list right now, but it's got its really interesting way of telling this story. The way that the story is brought towards the audience is we jump a little bit on timelines. We start near the end of the movie, and then we jump back, so we are back and forth within the timeline from the present day to the past, and then back and forth through portions of this movie. And as part of the romance between Wilberforce and Barbara Spooner, when they find out that they have a lot of very identical opinions, they decide once their courtship is over that they get wed on May 30th, 1797, which is about an hour and 22 minutes into this hour and 58-minute movie. And as it is the 31st of May, we are going to be watching Journey to the Center of the Earth from 1959, directed by Henry Levin and starring James Mason. So to begin with, I have definitely seen this movie several times prior to the viewing of this particular time. More than likely, seen it quite a few times on like Saturday afternoon shows and all that sort of thing, like the weekend, like the afternoon movie and whatnot. So it's usually filled up with a bunch of commercials and all that sort of thing. And it's as I started watching this for here, I believe this is actually probably the first time I've actually seen the actual widescreen version of this movie. And like it already mentioned, not only does the movie star James Mason, but also stars Pat Boone, Arlene Dahl, Peter Ronson, Thayer David, Robert Adler, Ellen Napier, and Diane Baker. So a geologist played by James Mason and his assistant played by Pat Boone set off on an expedition to the center of the Earth after following directions found on an inscription hidden in volcanic rock. The explorers traveled to a volcano in Iceland to begin their journeys, and along the way, a widow of a famous scientist, played by Arlene Dahl, and an Icelander, played by Peter Ronson, joined the party. However, the treacherous terrain and prehistoric monsters are not the only concern when a rival scientist, played by Thayer David, is on the trail. So, like I had also previously mentioned, I have seen this movie several times from being a kid. I believe the really cool, technicolor of this movie is what really caught my attention to begin with. Plus, with having the whole entire Jules Verne involved in the storyline telling as well is another reason why I enjoyed the movie. The interaction between the cast is quite interesting. James Mason is acting to his best James Mason-esque, and Pat Boone with his sometimes there, sometimes not accent is kind of interesting. And the fact that they give him several musical numbers. Gee, I wonder why. But visually, the movie is very alluring. We have a lot of really cool uses of a lot of effects that are a lot of practical and some in camera and whatnot. We have a lot of rear screen projection, and we have really cool, at the time, a black screen insert and whatnot. Some really fantastically built sets, and a lot of painted backgrounds that are really matte paintings that are used to their full potential, which makes it quite a fun watch to begin with. And after trying to get the mission started, the actual journey to the center of the Earth itself actually starts on May 31st, 1880. And that's about 45 minutes into this 2-hour and 9-minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that season, it actually ended up getting nominations for Best Art Direction, Set Direction, Best Special Effects, and Best Sound. And as it is the 1st of June, we are going to be watching Atonement from 2007, directed by Joe Wright and starring Keira Knightley. So to be completely honest, the only thing I really know about this movie is recognizing the poster when I saw it for this project. I'm aware of a great portion of the people that are involved in the cast, but other than that, until this project, I have not seen this movie. And like I said at the start, not only does this movie star Keira Knightley, but it also stars James McAvoy, Saoirse Ronan, Romola Garai, Vanessa Redgrave, Juno Temple, and Benedict Cumberbatch. So this very English set drama follows the lives of young lovers Cecilia Talius and Robbie Turner, who are Keira Knightley and James McAvoy, only to have the couple torn apart by a lie constructed by Celia's jealous younger sister of Brony, whose younger version is played by Saoirse Ronan, and how all three of them have to deal with the consequences. The hardest hit from this is Robbie, who gets actually, as a result, imprisoned, but hope for the two lovers to reunite their paths cross during World War II. Now, the way that they tell this story is an interesting way. At the very beginning, we deal with a younger version of the sister and how she interacts with the world. We then get to see the perspective of what her vision is, because as soon as she sees something, we then jump back slightly in time to actually see how the sequence actually played out and where she comes into the situation. The timeline, as we follow them well past, Robbie himself is given a choice of either staying in prison or joining up with the army because of the low ranks of the British armed forces. So he does that. He gets separated from his platoon and ends up meeting up with a couple of other guys that just survived. But we jump back and forth in the timeline, so it's kind of hard until we get to the very end to figure out where all the storyline leads. And again, it's a little confusing until you see the whole picture. One of the other things that this movie does have, though, is like one of my favorite tropes, which is an uncut scene, a oneer, as you would. This one has probably one of the really coolest ones that I've seen in a very, very long time. This is like a 5-minute full-length shot where Robbie and the other two soldiers that are with him as they come onto the beach where sailors have ended up finding themselves shipwrecked on because they don't have the support right now. And the camera follows these three people as they wander through the grouping of these people just scattered across this beach. And it's kind of cool because the camera follows them. The characters come in and out of frame. Sometimes we look away and come back and we follow like each of the three different ones. Camera's moving all the way around. And as the camera keeps moving back, you can see the background of the places where they've just been. And when we come up to the end of like this practically almost 5-minute shot, we then look out onto the sequence and we can trace the trail from the way past distance where these three characters have wandered their way all the way up to get to this point. It's just a fantastic shot. Now, again, big fan of James McAvoy and Keira Knightley. They do fantastic work together. This is a very dramatic movie. And sadly, unfortunately, it does not work out for these two lovers, whereas Robbie himself comes to die on June 1st, 1940 at Dunkirk itself, which is about an hour and 49 minutes into this 2-hour and 3-minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that season, it actually ended up winning for Best Original Score and was also nominated for Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, Best Picture, Best Actress in a Supporting Role, and Best Adapted Screenplay. And as it is the 2nd of June, we will be watching Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid from 1969, directed by George Roy Hill and starring Paul Newman. So I was introduced to this movie at a young age, like a lot of the movies that I came to watch several times throughout my life. But for a good portion of my life, I had only seen this on commercial television. So commercials put into every place, and probably not seen the full film in its entirety until much later in life. And even that being said, I believe it was even beyond that point where I actually finally be able to watch this movie in its widescreen edition. And like I had already mentioned, not only does this movie star Paul Newman, but it also stars Robert Redford, Catherine Ross, Strother Martin, Cloris Leachman, Ted Cassidy, Kenneth Mars, and George Firth. In this mostly true story of the fast draws and wild rides, battles with posses, train and bank robberies, torrid love affair, and a new lease on the outlaw life in the faraway Bolivia. It is also a character study of remarkable friendship between Butch, played by Paul Newman, who is possibly the most likable outlaw in frontier history, and his closest associate, the formidable and dangerous Sundance Kid, played by Robert Redford. So all that being said, this is a quintessential core Western movie that everybody must watch. Not only are we dealing with probably two of the best pairings of actors to be so charismatic on screen between the two of them at their peak of popularity, it is a fun movie to watch. It has some terrific action, some hilarious dialogue, and everything feels very cohesive and actually plausible. When certain things that look like it could definitely not happen, you physically do watch it happen on screen. The movie is filled with such practical in-camera effects and stunning stunts, a lot of really cool gunplay. The notable detonation of one of the train cars near the beginning of the movie is just a stunning scene that shows up in so many reels. And again, you can't get past the amazing talents of both Robert Redford and Paul Newman. These two proving that they are worthy of the status that they have accomplished from their career. And this is a textbook example of how you do that sort of relationship in a movie. And while I didn't mention it further earlier in this little video, but my viewing experience with this has come to the point where I enjoy it so much that it has been quite a while from the last time that I'd watched it that I had kind of forgotten how part of the movie goes. We actually have a movie split into two parts. At one part, we have a montage of photographs in sepia color that basically indicates a sort of an intermission in the storytelling as we finish off with one story and end up going on with another. And it's just, again, a fascinating movie to watch from a perspective of the years that it has been since the movie came out. And it's when Butch Cassidy and Sundance's team of the Hole in the Wall gang decide to rob the Union Pacific Flyer. The first robbery is on June 2nd, 1899, which is about 15 minutes into this 1 hour and 52-minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that season, it ended up winning for Best Cinematography, Best Original Score, Best Song, and Best Original Screenplay. It also ended up getting nominated for Best Director, Best Picture, and Best Sound. And as it is the 3rd of June, we are going to be watching Jane Eyre from 2011. Directed by Cary Fukunaga and starring Mia Wasikowska. So while I'm aware of the several versions of this particular story, I, until this very moment, have not seen any of those, not even actually even knowing what the original story is about to begin with. And when it comes to the cast, not only does it star Mia Wasikowska, it also stars Michael Fassbender, Jamie Bell, Judi Dench, Sally Hawkins, Tamsin Merchant, Imogen Poots, and Sophia Ward. As an orphan child, Jane Eyre, played by Mia Wasikowska, is first cruelly abused by her aunt, then cast out and sent to a charity school. Though she meets with further abuse, she receives an education and eventually takes a job as a governess in the estate of Edward Rochester, played by Michael Fassbender. Jane and Rochester begin to bond, but his dark moods trouble her. When Jane uncovers the terrible secret Rochester has been hiding, she flees and finds temporary refuge at the home of St. Jean Rivers, portrayed by Jamie Bell. So I'm going to have to admit that I had to do some research after this. It seemed like a weird way to tell this particular story that seemed a bit out of a line with reality, not the fact that it was like some sort of science fiction movie that I was watching, but the storytelling was not linear, which is something that I'm not used to. And I was interested to see if a movie based on a novel of such lineage was actually written in the fashion that I saw this movie. And again, having mentioned that I hadn't seen any other version of this movie, I did learn to find out that the filmmakers decided to use this plot of telling the story slightly out of positioning to give you a bigger twist upon the entire thing, because basically the beginning of the movie is almost near the end of the story, and we follow that point, and then we jump back to prior to what happened at the it's a whole entire back and forth sort of thing that I was unaware of, but doing the quick research found out, oh, this movie does it in this format, whereas the great number of other versions of Jane Eyre do not. Now, it does have a really distinctive darkness to this movie. I mean, there's everything's muted, everything's got dark colors. We have some fantastic scenery and sets that we deal with. We get some pretty half decent acting as well from our leads, and it's an interesting look at this again, reused several times prior, as well as since 2011 there have been other versions of this story. And after a bit of an absence, Jane Eyre returns to Mr. Rochester at the Thornfield where he lives, which she finds in ruins. And that happens on June 3rd, 1847. And that is about an hour and 47 minutes into this 2-hour film. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that particular season, it ended up getting nominated for Best Costume Design. Alright, on that note, we're going to wrap up this particular episode and look off into the future to see what movie we're going to be watching for June the 4th, and that is going to be The Man Who Knew Too Much from 1956. So until next time, go see a movie. This has been A Year of Movies, a Planet Geek production. Please be sure to subscribe, download, comment, share, rate, and review. Once again, another thanks to Ivan Walters for his book, A Year of Movies, 365 films to watch on the day they happened. Look for it online or at your local bookstore. Follow Planet Geek Productions on all of our social media. Through Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, and Letterboxd, search for Planet Geek Productions. On X, former Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, search for Planet Geek Pod. You can also reach out to us through email at planetgeekpod@gmail.com. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, go see a movie.